Let's play a game. Think of any new age disease, one that's relatively new for a lot of people in developed countries to have. Now go to the all-knowing Google and type in that disease followed by 2 words, insulin resistance. If you can do this and not have pages of scientific literature linking the two, then you win. Okay, let's start off simple. Cancer. We all have friends or family who have been diagnosed with it. Well, definitely research here. Maybe something a little more out there. How about arthritis? Nope, still a lot of papers. Okay, let's try something way out of the box, real weird. Iron overload. What? Come on, there's gotta be something. Okay, if this doesn't work, then I give up. As you will quickly realize, winning this game is about as likely as SpongeBob getting his driver's license. How is it possible that this one condition could lead to nearly every modern disease? In order to understand why insulin resistance is the driver behind much of modern chronic disease, we need to know why insulin is so important to begin with. Insulin is necessary for growth and energy production. Those processes are somewhat important, but it goes beyond that. Insulin controls so many different functions throughout the body. Insulin resistance is most commonly accompanied by hyperinsulinemia, high blood levels of insulin even while fasted. Since insulin is so high, even though the body resists signaling, you will still get some signaling. It's not like there's absolutely no insulin action at all, or else you die within weeks. However, the body constantly being in the fed state, characterized by insulin signaling, can cause all sorts of dysfunction. I think Chris Masterjohn's analogy of how it works is spot on.
Right? You have limited space in your house, and your closet, like some people's closets are highly organized, but mine, I don't know about yours. My closet is usually a mess. And so if times are tight, you might say like, oh, I don't wear this shirt. I'm going to sell it. That will free up space in my closet. It'll turn over the resources. I'll get a little bit more money. I can put that money into savings to protect myself, or I can sell 10 shirts that I don't want to buy one shirt that I really like. And you start economizing and making space. And then when times are not so tight, you start buying things that you like better to put it in your closet. But now you're not overloading your closet. Everything's nice and neat because you've cleaned so much of it out. That when you put things you really like in there, now your closet's beautiful. It's easy to find things, and so on and so forth.
At this point, you're thinking, what the hell did this guy just say, and what does it have to do with chronic disease? Essentially, reaching both the fed and fasted states are crucial for good health. In the fasted state, we burn excess energy, we activate cleanup processes, and we repair. In the fed state, we build muscle, synthesize hormones, and store energy for a rainy day. Tipping the scale in either direction is where we see problems, but while most people can easily understand starving to death, not many understand eating to death. Just take a stroll into any Walmart or big box store and you will see them, buying more and more products to feed their food addiction. Let's get a little bit more specific. First, we can talk about cancer. Remember how I said insulin is important for growth and energy utilization? Well, it's also important for cancer cells growing and using energy. That shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. If you already have cancer, constantly feeding the cells is bad. Great, thanks. But can insulin resistance actually initiate cancer? It's been shown that diabetics are significantly more likely to develop cancer and die from it than those who are metabolically healthy. A metabolically unhealthy body is the perfect environment for cancer cells to both form and prosper. As we've discussed previously, the metabolic syndrome will result in higher blood levels of glucose and inflammation, and the insulin resistance will impair the body's ability to create endogenous antioxidants. This all leads to one thing: oxidative stress. Reactive molecules in excess of the body's capability to cope with them can result in damage of macromolecules like proteins, cell membranes, and in the case of cancer, DNA. DNA damage is a key driver in creating cancer cells. The fed state signaling in insulin resistance, even if it is not strong, is persistent. Even without eating food for multiple hours, the insulin stays high, meaning the body never truly gets to go into house cleaning mode. During the fasted state, a master energy regulator known as AMPK becomes activated, and it can trigger the wonderful process of autophagy. This is when the body basically releases microscopic Pac-Men that go around and degrade various dysfunctional proteins and organelles. Autophagy is protective against cancer spread for this reason. It can get rid of any dysfunctional spare parts before things get out of hand. Additionally, AMPK will subsequently trigger proteins that repair DNA and other factors that maintain normal DNA function, providing another layer of protection. In fact, metformin, the world's most widely used diabetic medication, has also been used for cancer patients with encouraging results. Shocking, right? It's almost like insulin resistance is at the core of cancer, and using a drug that helps insulin sensitivity also helps with cancer. But I digress. Metformin is a potent activator of AMPK. Metformin almost seems like a magical drug since its applications are so widespread. Research has shown that it can even be useful in the treatment of another new age disease, rheumatoid arthritis. This is an autoimmune condition with one of the most common features being increased numbers of certain cells in joint tissue. These cells are capable of producing inflammatory cytokines, leading to the joint pain that is common in rheumatoid arthritis. Metformin can halt the replication pathways in these cells by stimulating AMPK, again, a hallmark of the fasted state. Since one of the key characteristics of insulin resistance is perpetually being in the fed state, it should come as no surprise that insulin resistance is present in rheumatoid arthritis. One study looked at 195 patients with rheumatoid arthritis and found that on average, they were 31% more insulin resistant than the control group. Insulin is also important in suppressing a protein known as fasting-induced adipose factor, or ANGPLT4. The role of this protein is to increase fat burning and block the flow of triglycerides into adipose tissue. While fasting, this is quite useful since we need fat to fuel our energy demands, and we don't want to be storing triglycerides as body fat. ANGPLT4 also breaks down cartilage and bone tissue, and when we start to eat, we rebuild them with new, better functioning tissue. A healthy person will have a constant breakdown and build-up process in the fasting and fed states, constantly renewing tissue leading to robust joint health. However, when insulin signaling is deficient, we don't get this suppression of this protein and the joint tissue degrades over time. When people are infused with insulin, ANGPLT4 levels rise. Another study isolated cartilage and found that dropping insulin onto them decreased cartilage breakdown by 30% and increased cartilage synthesis by 240%. Without strong insulin signaling, cartilage breakdown increases and synthesis decreases, so the joints break down over time. It's pretty clear that insulin resistance can wreak havoc on the body, but it can't affect the mind. Can it? Depression is the number one cause of disability for Americans aged 15 to 44 and affects 1 in 10 adults. Depression is real. It destroys the life of the affected person as well as their friends and family. Sadly, growing up in this modern era, depression affects all ages and can have a number of external causes, but we need to face the facts. Depression of unknown cause is a new age disorder, and the rates have been skyrocketing in the past few decades. It leads to destroyed lives. While this may be in part due to more people coming forward due to lessening of social stigmas and admitting how they feel, it shouldn't be this way. Humans dominate the planet for a reason. We wouldn't have made it this far with a large proportion of us feeling upset and unmotivated to do anything. I believe there is good evidence to show that insulin resistance can be a major contributor to the development of depression. We are not saying that depression is not a chemical imbalance. We are saying that there are multiple causes and considerations. A common theory we often hear in commercials is that depression is simply a chemical imbalance, where the brain lacks enough serotonin. Serotonin is often considered a hormone of happiness, clearly exhibited by the awesome effects of MDMA releasing tons of serotonin at once. However, while this could be a reason for depression in certain individuals, it is pretty clearly not the only cause, and may not be the most important one. In fact, certain studies have found that depressed patients actually had significantly higher levels of serotonin. There are also depletion studies, which feed people diets devoid of any tryptophan, the precursor to serotonin, and these people experience no change in their mood. We know that diabetics are 2 to 3 times more likely to suffer from depression than non-diabetics, and we know that anywhere from 40 to 60% of depressed people have some sort of metabolic dysfunction. We also know that correlation does not mean causation, and we need actual studies to prove that insulin resistance can cause depression. And we do. Insulin has multiple important functions in the brain, including regulating energy expenditure, neurotransmitter signaling, and neuron growth and differentiation. Feeling lethargic and changes in appetite are common symptoms in major depressive disorders, and dysregulated insulin action could play a role here. Dopamine is of particular interest when it comes to depression because it is crucial in the brain's reward system. Dopamine is not a neurotransmitter of pleasure, but of motivation. Dysregulations in dopamine activation are linked to anhedonia, described by the DSM as, quote, diminished interest or pleasure in response to stimuli that were previously perceived as rewarding before the development of the disorder. This is a key component of depression. Insulin is important for dopamine signaling since it inhibits an enzyme known as monoamine oxidase, which breaks down dopamine. When mice have their neuron insulin receptor removed, blocking any and all insulin signaling, they have both decreased dopamine production and increased monoamine oxidase. However, none of this matters if they didn't actually display depressive-like symptoms, but they do. One test conducted is called the forced swim test.
Place each animal in a water-filled cylindrical container and film the behavior of the mice for a total of 6 minutes. The final step is to code the duration of time spent immobile, struggling, and swimming using forced swim test analysis software. Ultimately, the forced swim test is used to show that when placing an animal in a container filled with water, it will eventually exhibit immobility that may be a measure of behavioral despair.
Another is called the tail suspension test, where they tape the tails of mice down and see how long it takes them to try and get out. These might seem like strange ways to tell if a mouse is depressed, but what else are you going to do? Ask them how their day went? Mice got worse scores in every single one of these tests when they had their insulin receptor knocked out. In humans, giving depressed people drugs that improve their insulin sensitivity have improved cognitive function and reports of reduced depressive symptoms. They have also been used in mice to help reverse depressive symptoms, of course by enhancing insulin sensitivity, but also by stimulating hippocampus neurogenesis. Hippocampal atrophy is one of the key characteristics of depression, and it is thought to be the result of excessive stress hormone secretion, which is caused by, you guessed it, insulin resistance. While it's still debated whether the breakdown of the hippocampus is the cause or the result of depression, the hypersecretion of stress hormones is likely a driver of the illness. Restoring insulin sensitivity will allow for greater control over these hormones, protect the hippocampus, and even regenerate it. Insulin also facilitates synaptic plasticity, the strengthening of synapses that leads to learning and memory. It has been hypothesized that with a defective ability to carry out these functions, people can have a decreased adaptation to stress, potentially predisposing them to depression. The other piece of the equation is, of course, inflammation. Depressed people typically have higher circulating levels of inflammatory components. In fact, there's a condition called interferon alpha-induced depression, where patients given inflammatory cytokines to treat hepatitis infections develop depression. Inflammation can cause disruptions in neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, and can activate stress hormones, both of which are important in causing depression. Insulin resistance is a potent driver of inflammation as well, just another way it can potentially lead to depression. It might seem like these conditions, from cancer to arthritis to depression, are just the result of having bad genetics, but it is clear that insulin resistance is a major contributing factor. Our genes haven't changed that much in the last century, but our metabolic health has become absolutely atrocious, leading to all of this disease. Insulin resistance is totally preventable and reversible. Don't let the higher-ups tell you that chronic disease is inevitable and just something you have to live with. Let's continue to spread the word on what is really causing the downfall of humanity. If you enjoy our videos and would like to support us and get some exclusive benefits, click the link for our Patreon account. Don't let them fool you. Subscribe to our channel, drop a like, and stay healthy.